Everything is going to be all right now. Just try to relax and enjoy the meal.
Thank you so much.
I thought I was rescuing a homeless family that night, but I didn't realize until much later that they were the ones who saved me. At 63 years old, I can finally admit that truth. 5 years ago, at the height of my career, I was a man the world admired and a man no one truly knew. My name is Robert Anderson, and I had everything people are told to chase: wealth, status, authority. I was the CEO of Anderson Financial Group, a company I had built from nothing over 3 decades of relentless ambition. My name carried weight. My signature moved markets. My presence opened doors. Yet every night I returned to silence. I lived in a glass penthouse overlooking the city, a skyline that glittered like success itself. Luxury cars waited in my private garage. First-class tickets were booked without thought. People leaned forward when I spoke, but behind all of it was an absence so heavy it felt physical. My wife Catherine had died 4 years earlier after a brutal fight with ovarian cancer. We never had children. We told ourselves we were building a future first. The future arrived without her. After she died, work became my refuge and my prison. I stretched my days to 14 hours, my weeks to 7 days, my identity shrinking until it existed only in profit margins and board meetings. I had colleagues, not friends, contacts, not connections. My younger brother and I hadn't spoken properly in years after a business disagreement neither of us was mature enough to let go of. My mother was aging quietly, seeing me twice a year at best. I told myself sacrifice was necessary. In truth, I was avoiding the loneliness waiting for me outside the office. That late November evening followed the same pattern. Snow fell steadily, thick and soft, transforming the city into something almost gentle. I stayed late again, reviewing reports I barely absorbed. Around 8 o'clock, my assistant reminded me I had nothing scheduled. She suggested I go home. I nodded, gathered my coat, and left, but I didn't go home. Home was just an empty apartment and another night of pretending I wasn't alone. Instead, I walked into a small Italian restaurant I visited occasionally. It wasn't extravagant, but it was warm and quiet. The kind of place where no one asked questions. Families filled the room, couples leaning toward one another, children laughing softly. I took my usual corner table, my back against the wall, observing but unseen. I had just ordered when I noticed raised voices near the entrance. The hostess stood facing a woman holding a toddler, another child beside her clutching a small paper crane. Even from across the room, their situation was obvious. The woman's coat was thin, her posture tense. The children were clean but worn, layered carefully against the cold. They carried the unmistakable exhaustion of people who had been surviving, not living. "I'm sorry," the hostess said quietly. "Without money, I can't seat you." The woman didn't argue. She simply asked if they could warm up for a few minutes because of the snow. The answer remained no. As the door opened, icy air rushed in. The little girl looked back at the restaurant, her breath fogging the glass, her eyes filled with longing that cut through me without warning. I don't know why I stood. Maybe it was the contrast between my tailored suit and their worn clothes. Maybe it was the way the mother shielded her children with instinctive tenderness. Or maybe I was just tired of pretending my life was full. Whatever the reason, I walked to the entrance and spoke before doubt could stop me. I offered them my table, my dinner, my company. The woman stiffened immediately, suspicion flashing across her face. She said she didn't want charity. I told her it wasn't charity. I told her the truth. I hated eating alone. That honesty surprised both of us. After a long pause, she agreed. "Just dinner," she said, "nothing more." Her name was Sarah. The children were Emma and Jack. Emma was 5, quiet and observant. Jack was barely 3, staring at me with open curiosity. When we sat, Sarah studied the menu like a calculation, choosing restraint over hunger. I ordered freely despite her protests. When the food arrived, she fed her children first, even as her own hands trembled slightly. That was when Emma told me about the paper cranes. She had folded hundreds, 743 to be exact. 1,000 would earn a wish. Her wish was a home. That simple statement unsettled me more than any corporate crisis ever had. I had spent my life accumulating excess. She was counting hope. Sarah eventually shared their story. Her husband had died in a workplace accident. No insurance. No compensation. Rent rose. Illness cost her job. Shelters were full. Their car broke down. 3 months of homelessness, not from failure but from misfortune stacking relentlessly. As snow fell outside the window, something inside me fractured. These people didn't care who I was. They didn't know my name carried power. They only saw a man who had shared a meal. When it was time to leave, Emma handed me a paper crane she had folded from a napkin. She said it was for good luck, and so I wouldn't be lonely anymore. That night, walking back into my empty apartment, I realized something terrifying. A child with nothing had seen me more clearly than anyone in my professional life ever had, and the consequences of that realization were only just beginning. I did not sleep that night. The paper crane sat on my bedside table, fragile and unimpressive by any material standard, yet it felt heavier than the penthouse walls surrounding me. I kept hearing Emma's voice, calm and certain, wishing I would not be lonely anymore. For the first time in years, I questioned everything I had built my life around. All the wealth, all the influence, all the endless striving, and still a child who owned nothing had recognized the emptiness in me within minutes. The next morning, instead of heading straight to the office, I did something entirely out of character. I picked up the phone and called a social services agency. I didn't demand answers. I didn't use my name to intimidate. I simply explained that I had met a family who might need help and asked if there was a way for them to know support existed if they wanted it. The caution in the agent's voice reminded me how rarely people try to help without conditions. When the call ended, I felt unsettled, as if I had stepped outside a role I had been playing for decades. Then I made another call, this time to my own company. I asked HR about current hearing needs, specifically in dental hygiene. I asked about flexibility, transitional support, internal assistance programs. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I realized then how distant I had been from the human realities of the organization I ran. I had been leading from spreadsheets, not from understanding. Over the following days, I noticed the world differently. People I had walked past for years suddenly came into focus. The man sleeping near my office building. The woman huddled in her car outside the supermarket. Before I had looked away without even realizing I was doing it. Now I couldn't. I began volunteering one evening a week at a shelter anonymously. No announcements, no praise, just service. I listened to stories that sounded painfully similar to Sarah's. People who had worked hard, people who had loved. People who had lost everything through no moral failure of their own. 2 weeks later, Sarah called. Her voice was cautious, measured. We met for coffee in a quiet place where she could keep an eye on her children. I offered her a job, a real one, not a favor, not a donation. She refused immediately, her pride rising to protect what dignity she had left. She said she couldn't accept charity. I told her it wasn't charity. I told her she was qualified, that the position existed, that expectations would apply, that she would earn every step forward. She studied me the same way she had that first night, searching for hidden motives. Finally, she asked why. I told her the truth, about the paper crane, about loneliness, about forgetting what mattered. Her expression softened, not with pity but with understanding. She accepted. Sarah began working 3 weeks later. We arranged temporary housing through a program I had never paid attention to before. Within months, she stabilized. She worked harder than anyone on her team, not because she owed me, but because she valued opportunity. Emma started school and joined an origami club. Jack entered preschool, full of noise and ambition. I found myself having dinner with them occasionally, sitting at a table that felt warmer than any luxury restaurant I had ever visited. But the changes didn't stop there. I reached out to my brother. Years of silence collapsed into one awkward conversation, then another until resentment gave way to laughter. I began visiting my mother regularly, listening instead of rushing. At work, I introduced employee support systems, emergency assistance, flexible structures. Some executives resisted. They spoke of profit margins and focus. I listened, then reminded them that companies are built by people, not numbers. A few walked away, I let them. The paper crane remained on my desk, enclosed in a small case. Whenever decisions felt heavy, whenever I felt myself slipping back into isolation, I looked at it. It reminded me that success without connection is simply loneliness with better furniture. Years passed. Sarah was promoted twice. Emma continued folding cranes, giving them away to people she believed needed hope. Jack dreamed of becoming a firefighter. They were no longer homeless. They had stability, a future. And yet the greatest truth remained this: they had given me as much as I had given them, perhaps more. I had thought kindness was something the strong gave to the weak. That night taught me something different. Kindness is an exchange, a mirror, a reminder. It stripped away the illusion that money could protect me from emptiness. It showed me that home is not a place. It is belonging. It is being seen. It is caring and allowing yourself to be cared for. People sometimes ask why I invest so much time in social initiatives now, why I focus on people instead of pure profit. I tell them about a snowy November evening, about a small restaurant, about a homeless family, and about a paper crane folded by cold hands and given with a pure heart. I tell them that the best investment I ever made wasn't financial. It was human. Emma once wished that I wouldn't be lonely anymore. Her wish came true, not because of money, not because of power, but because I finally remembered who I was beneath all of it. If this story moved you, if it made you pause or reflect, then this channel is for you. Subscribe, like, and share. Here, we don't just tell stories, we reveal truths. And sometimes the smallest acts of kindness change the biggest lives.